International train travel is much easier, quicker and greener than you might imagine. If you follow this man Mark, also known as the man in Seat 61's advice, then you might find that your trip is not just more eco-friendly and enjoyable than planes, but it might also cost a similar amount as well. So we're here today with Mark Smith, and I'd like to just start with the moniker actually. Why seat61.com?
It's my favourite seat in Eurostar first class. When I was travelling on some special trip, be it to Tokyo and Nagasaki via the Trans-Siberian or Marrakesh via Paris and Madrid, I treat myself to first class on Eurostar. And I like a seat with a nice view out the window that lines up with the window nicely. Seat 61, coach 7, 8, 11 or 12 fit the bill. So when the website came along, the name was there.
Just tell us a little bit about the website. What can people find on it?
Well, it goes back to a cold winter evening when I was commuting to and from London. The momentous day arrived when I finally finished my novel. Not the novel I was writing, the one I was reading on the train home. And I went into W.H. Smith's, as you do, and bought a Teach Yourself HTML book. HTML, the language that websites are written in. Cost me all of £2.95. Probably the best £2.95 I have ever spent in my life. And by me, it worked. I got a web page online, and I thought I would fill the gap, the information gap, between how easy, practical and affordable it can be to take the train, not just to Paris or Brussels, but from London to Italy or Spain or Austria or Sweden. When I first started, the typical Seat 61 user said they had a flying phobia, or they were medically restricted from flying, or they knew they liked trains. And that's changed over the last 6 to 8 years. This isn't a recent thing, it's at least 6 to 8 years that this trend has been going on. People now say two things in the same breath. They're fed up with the airline and airport experience, and they want to cut their carbon footprint. And those two things go together. Now, it might be 80-20 for the average person. It might be 20-80 for people who are seriously eco-minded. But they all, if they tell me why they want to go by train, those are the two things they say together, like flip sides of the same coin. I didn't get into train travel because of the ecological side. I got in years ago before anyone thought about that. I got into train travel because it's so much nicer than the experience of airports and flights. So my message is that if you ditch your flight and take the train, you're not suffering or donning sackcloth and ashes to save the planet. Actually, you're doing yourself a favour, never mind the planet as well. Taking the train expands your horizons. The journey becomes part of the experience, part of your holiday, not something nasty you have to go through at either end. And there are times, some scenic routes in Europe, where the journey can actually be a highlight of your whole trip. You can find cheap fares if you book ahead. You can find cheap fares if you go to the right website for the right journey, usually direct to the relevant train operator. But it is more difficult to book. But it's like most things in life. You put more effort in, you just get so much more out.
What do you think is the most cost-effective but fun journey anyone could take? Let's say, for example, just now that we're here or close to it, living in London, where would you recommend cost-effective, fun, easy weekend getaway?
Well, probably the best value ticket in the whole of Western Europe is one sold by the Czech Railways from Brussels to Prague for €21. Or you can really push the boat out and go first class for €40. Don't ask me how the Czech Railways managed to sell this ticket, which covers mostly German trains until the Czech border, for as little as that. But they do. So if you hop on Eurostar for £44 one way or £58 return to Brussels, stay overnight, and the following day go all the way to Prague for €21. That is quite a remarkable deal.
Which train route would you like to see renewed? One that's disappeared but might one day make a comeback?
There have been a number of night trains disappear in recent years in Europe that were incredibly useful and have turned simple journeys into journeys that require overnight stops. So I'd love to see Paris to Madrid train hotel restored. I'd also like to see the sleeper to Copenhagen restored, which is actually on the cards. It could happen. We've seen a decline in sleeper trains in Western Europe over recent years, but Austrian railways have created their Nightchat brand, have found a way of making them profitable. There's no problem getting passengers to travel on them. People like these night trains. That was never the problem. It was the economics the costs of doing so. And OBB are cautiously expanding their nightjet network. So we're about to see the Cologne-Vienna sleeper extended back to Brussels and possibly in a year's time Amsterdam, creating a direct link between Brussels and not just Vienna but actually Innsbruck and Munich as well. And you'll be able to catch an afternoon Eurostar, make one change in Brussels and end up in the Austrian capital next morning.
What are the advantages of sleeper trains and why do you feel like they should make a comeback if you do?
High-speed trains are great over the shorter distances. Paris to Amsterdam now takes 3 hours 20 minutes compared to getting to the airport, checking in for 2 hours, taking an hour flight. It's as fast or faster. But there are journeys like Paris to Venice or Paris to Madrid or Vienna to Rome that are simply too long for high-speed trains, even where a high-speed line exists. But if a train leaves in the evening and arrives in the morning, well, that takes less time out of your schedule than even flying. If you can sleep in a proper bed, possibly in your own room, some of them have ensuite shower and toilet, get breakfast the following morning, that's a very convenient option. Saves you the cost of getting to and from the airport, there's no baggage fees, saves you a night in a hotel, and in some of these cities a hotel can be expensive. And certainly if you book a bed, it can be a great experience. I love having my own room, snuggling down between crisp, clean sheets, reading a book by the glow of my berth light as steel wheels swishes on steel rail beneath me. The romance is still there.
And I think even people often talk about arriving in the city centre, quite simply, that's hugely convenient compared to jumping on a plane. And
just walk out of the station, Venice is a classic example, walk out of the station, you are met with probably the most amazing view of arrival view of any station anywhere. The Grand Canal right in front of you, gondolas. You can be at the Rialto Bridge, 15 minutes walk. You can be at St Mark's Square, 20 minutes walk. I mean, that's the sort of convenience that we're talking.
What is your favourite train station?
St Pancras, London St Pancras. Used to be incredibly shabby, but what they have done to it, restoring it, making it a destination in its own right, is absolutely stupendous.
Which country has the best trains that you've travelled on?
Oh, that's tricky because they've all got pluses and minuses. I have to mention Switzerland, where everything really does work like clockwork and everything connects. And it's a classic example of how you should run a transport system. Then again, I love the panache of Spanish high-speed trains. Even where they use a basically French design, they put a Spanish flair to it, and I also happen to be partial to Spanish wine and the café con leche they serve on board too.
Fantastic. What about kind of closer to home? What are some of your favourite journeys within the UK?
Well, that's easy. The best train in Britain is the Caledonian Sleeper from London Euston to Fort William on the in the West Highlands. It's a little travelling hotel. It leaves the big smoke every night except Saturday night, so you can disappear on a Friday well after work. You can even go for a drink after work, then catch this train. And it speeds at 80 miles an hour through boring suburbs like Hemel Hempstead and Berkhamsted, and then you wake up in the middle of nowhere at 35 miles an hour with a diesel struggling on the front, deer bounding away from the train, babbling brooks and mountains outside your window, and the fantastic West Highlands at the other end. You arrive at Fort William, which is sort of 10 minutes walk from the bottom of the trail up Ben Nevis.
Which journeys, new or renewed routes, would you like to see, or would you recommend even in 2020? Is there things you're looking forward to?
There is a new train about to start between Ankara and Tbilisi and Baku. Now, Georgia and Azerbaijan aren't known as peak travel destinations, but I've always been surprised at how many people do seem to go there and contact me about it and rave about those countries as a place to go. So a new train with modern sleeping cars, including some with ensuite shower and toilet, going from the capital of Turkey straight to these destinations where currently you have to catch a train followed by a bus followed by another train. That sounds very interesting indeed. And also, of course, we have OBB's Nightjet starting to run from Brussels direct to Vienna, Innsbruck and Munich, which will make it much easier to get from the UK to Austria and southern Germany, which I'm looking forward to.